I am not introducing Dr. Green, so this will be kind. This morning, we have the opportunity to continue our faculty lecture series called This I Believe. And I am excited today because we get to hear the one and only Sarah Huffines. After receiving her BA from the University of Florida and an MFA from Penn State University, she's been here at Covenant College since 2006. Many of you have come to know and appreciate Professor Huffines. She's not only an associate professor of English here, but also the director of the Writing Center. Can't tell if that means you need a lot of help and go to the Writing Center, but I'll leave that there. Personally, I find that there are some people who, when you hear them read their writing, you just sit there wanting more. For example, when I hear folks like Professor Huffines or our own Robert Earl Barnum publicly read essays that they write, to be perfectly honest, I just sit there in delight. These people are so incredibly gifted. They're so good with words, with images, and with narrative. And I think partly what makes people like Sarah so able is that she lives well within her own story. I should say that. She lives well within her own story. Otherwise, take that the right way. Sarah and her husband, Mark, have two young sons, Simon and Wendell. And on any given late sunny afternoon, my guess will be late this afternoon will be one of those. If you go by their house, you might find them out with the kids exploring a creek or climbing a rock or savoring whatever simple pleasures are before them as they live in the moment. And I think that gives her insight. So, and this is true, the fact that her office window is the place where ladybugs go to die, and I started to think about this, ladybugs go there to die, and you can ask her, makes me actually think that the ladybugs are drawn to her because they want to hear her stories. And they're dying to hear her stories. And the question I have for us is, will any of you be able to get up and leave when she's finished talking? No pressure. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for the kind introduction. Ladybugs just don't go to my office to die. All of the ladybugs go to my office to die. And I'm often, or more than once, I've been sitting with a student, we've been talking, and all of a sudden their sort of distraction happens. They say, ew, I have a lot of them. I'd like to start out this morning with two small anecdotes. The first, in the first few years after I graduated from the University of Florida, my husband and I would meet up once or twice a year with some of our dearest friends from college and vacation together. Once at a relative's beach house in Pensacola, another time at a friend's barn in the Shenandoah Mountains. And we would just be together and enjoy each other's company in the ways that old college friends can do. And we scattered around the country for jobs or grad school, but we still tried to meet up. And one winter, someone suggested New York City. So one January weekend, we got a great deal on a couple of hotel rooms. We met up. We shoved our ragtag luggage into them, and we went exploring. And things went wrong almost immediately. Wanting to find our way to a particular restaurant, we got disoriented getting off the subway, if we had even navigated that successfully to begin with, and that's hard to say. By group decision, we just started walking. 8 young adults marched down the street, sort of jackets pulled tightly against us, here, cheeks burning and eyes watering in the sharp January wind. We made it a few blocks before those in front stopped, and we all stopped behind them like a row of little ducklings. I don't think this is right, one of them said, and we got out the stupidly tiny map we had probably gotten for free at the hotel. A few gathered, heads huddled, consulted. They tried to flip the map to match the way we were standing, and we changed directions, flinching in the cold. And in this manner, we had several false starts and stops, redirections. Our flip phones were no use to us. We were hungry, and we couldn't figure out where we were or how to get where we wanted. I thought I knew the right direction. At first, I tried my usual passive-aggressive method of making a quiet suggestion and waiting for everyone else to realize for themselves how wrong they were. We walked, we stopped, we turned the map, we shivered. Then I tried making my suggestion a little louder. Some disagreed, and others were obligated by marriage to team up with them. So we walked, we turned the map, we looked for the Empire State Building on the horizon, hoping it would serve as our navigational beacon. Half of the group became stupidly passive, giving up on ever orienting ourselves, and the other half continued to negotiate the space between being right and staying friends. When at one point our pregnant friend slipped on a patch of ice as we tried to hurry across yet another street, I saw it as some sort of cosmic confirmation that we should have been going my way, but only after I knew she was okay. I'd like to say that ultimately I was proven right, but I don't think I was. I can't actually even remember how we resolved our directional problems. So we are, in a sense, still stuck there in my memory, bumbling in the urban canyon, turning and returning, hungry, cold, and frustrated. In this memory, I'm probably trying not to cry. The second anecdote I'd like to offer is of another city journey by means of a contrast. This fall, I found myself again wandering a large urban environment, a city I didn't know, this time in a language I didn't know either. I was visiting a friend, and this friend and I walked and walked and walked. She told me about her new life in this city, about God's work there, and we'd occasionally consult the guidebook for suggestions as we wandered side by side. Every once in a while, I would have to interrupt the conversation. Wait, is this the way to go? I'd ask, and we'd consult, again, the free map, and make our best guess. Sometimes we were wrong, but we continued to walk, retracing our steps, walking messy loops around the city. Cobblestones, alleys lined with cafes, the Muslim call to prayer echoing and making my airplane-clogged ears buzz like a live speaker. One late afternoon, a light but slushy rain came down, and we linked arms and walked under the same umbrella, our breath visible, our fingers turning white. "Sarah," she asked me, "what do you like about traveling?" It was funny timing, but she was being sincere. And we'd done some exploring before, both home and abroad, in cities and in nature. My feet were aching, even in my hiking boots, and the hems of my pant legs were cold and wet. "One thing I like is the wandering," I told her. And in that moment, I did. The circles around the city, not just the chance for discovery, but the beautiful moment that happens when I am so immersed in navigating and watching that I forget just for a minute about myself. And when I'm done, though I might not have seen the most important parts of a city, I do have a better sense of the whole. I've had a chance to understand a place with my body, to lose myself, to retrace my steps or change directions. The wandering. 24-year-old me, had she been able, would have reached a mittened hand out of that lost New York memory and punched me in the face. The wandering? But I wasn't really surprised to hear myself say that in that moment. It was going well, after all. And if you've ever been in one of my classes where we've talked about the tradition of the personal essay, you might not have been surprised either. Because in the tradition of the personal essay, my very favorite literary genre, everybody needs one, right? Wandering is the point. I like to define the personal essay as simply a strong narrator working through an idea on the page. So the first appeal of the essay is that you get a strong sense of the narrator, who is honest, vulnerable, fallible, often self-deprecating, but also curious and open. The kind of person whose company you're likely to enjoy as you work through the essay. The second appeal of the essay is that you get to watch this narrator think, figure something out. It's not just a record of the product of contemplation, but it enacts the contemplation itself. So the essayist swoops and speculates, hedges her arguments, talks around a big idea, enjoys the view along the way, and then finally gets somewhere. By means of an illustration, let me describe really quickly an essay I taught recently. In it, the essayist starts off by wondering why he gets so annoyed at certain expressions of joyfulness, specifically the notion of joie de vivre. He starts anecdotally, talking about really disliking this tan French painter who lives on a boat, as one does. But he goes on to try and figure out why joie de vivre bothers him so much, and we get a tour of his mind and his life along the way. He also hates, but doesn't expect the reader to hate, dinner parties, pictures of the elderly holding hands with children, wine and cheese picnics, admonishments to be mindful of the present, and sitting by swimming pools. But as he circles the topic widely, tracing and retracing his steps, changing his mind and honing in, he starts to bring the reader along with him. You think, yeah, I hate sitting by swimming pools too. You don't. But I like his conclusions. In this essay and in others, we have taken a wandering walk through the essay with this real narrator, and we are left with a bigger sense of the whole. And I've thought of this a lot lately, of the perambulations around the cities, of my interest in the seemingly blind wanderings of travelers and essayists alike. And I've been thinking of these things because my life, my family's life, has undergone a great deal of change in the last few years. Changes in church, changes in work and neighborhoods, changes in the size of our family have all led to deep and prolonged discussions about our values, our desires, our goals. And buried underneath those discussions, just under the surface really, are a potent pair of questions. Am I doing this right? And shouldn't I have this worked out by now? Shouldn't I be confidently marching through life with the goals and values I formed early in my life? Or even better yet, the voice of God himself instructing me like the voice of my phone's GPS. But instead, I often find myself not confidently navigating the task before me, but instead retracing my steps, doubling back, changing my mind about what I thought my life would be like. For example, it turns out that I'm the kind of mom who, when dinner doesn't get put in the crock pot that morning, instead serves crackers and hummus for dinner. And they aren't even organic. It turns out that we are the family that, with 2 kids, suddenly chooses elbow room and a good school district over historic charm and a familiar neighborhood. Or the kind of family that, when something isn't working, tries something new. And so I'm changing my mind, retracing my steps, sometimes relearning things I thought I'd learned before. And as much as I'd like to say I have approached these things with the joyful aplomb of the more recent city wanderer, in truth, I am more often stuck in the first story, cold and frustrated, wondering where the streets are on my map, turning it over, craning my neck looking for street signs, ready to sit on the curb and put my head in my hands. Am I doing this right? Why is this hard? Here's part of what I've come to believe. I think it's hard to have to change my mind, to make best guesses on major life decisions, to find myself faced with the same lessons to learn multiple times, because I'm trying to live up to an image of myself that I'd like to believe in. In an ideal world, this Sarah Huffines knows the right choices to make and takes appropriate small steps to get there. She's decisive. Her hair is never messy. She never gets impatient with her kids or eats takeout 2 nights in a row. She has made all of the people happy all of the time. She will stay in the same neighborhood her whole life, advance only one direction in her career, and best of all, she has the map. She has the map, and she walks confidently from beginning to end without once wondering if maybe she hasn't been on this street before. But this isn't just an ideal image, it's an idol, a great big Sarah Huffines idol that I spend my time serving rather than living the life that's laid out before me. But this image isn't the only thing that's making this so frustrating. I think part of it is the framing, the metaphor I use to think about my life. So what I'd like to do here this morning is propose a metaphor. I'd like to propose a metaphor that might be handy for those moments when you're feeling aimless. What I'd really like to do is propose a metaphor to myself, for myself when I'm feeling aimless, or at least for myself and anyone else like me who happens to be compulsively introspective. I'd like to take the two metaphors used already. The metaphors life is navigation and essays are navigation, and construct something new with them. I believe I am an essay, and you are too. So remember when I said that the personal essay boils down to a strong narrator thinking through an idea on the page, changing her mind, circling back around? It was like 3 minutes ago. Just reminding you. Let's talk about the person part first. If the first thing that I really enjoy about essays is their flawed and honest narrator, then what in the world am I doing trying to live up to this crazy Sarah Huffines idol? I do have messy hair. I do get impatient with my kids. I don't often know where I'm going. And so I need to acknowledge that I am, in fact, human. And my need for grace is not just this sort of shameful thing, but at its core, a picture of God's beautiful grace at work, enveloping me and sustaining me. Now, does this mean that I should go on sinning so that grace may increase? By no means, Paul says. But I do need to knock down this idol for a clearer look at who I really am, a look that acknowledges my humanity in light of what God has done for me. A look, in fact, trained by the reading and celebration of countless essays, where narrators try to give us a whole picture of who we are, they are. And then there's the second part of the essay, thinking through an idea, changing her mind, circling back around. In a creative essay, a personal essay, the turn of thought, if clearly signaled, is not disgraceful, it's not confusing, it's just a turn of the plot. In fact, it is part of the very expectation of what essays do. It's how you know the narrator is growing. So when, say, my husband changes career paths, it is not necessarily capricious or flighty. Rather, it may be part of the journey, the figuring things out. And I'd like to add, it can take courage to make life changes like that, and I am proud of him. Or let me give you another example from my family. When my father, in his early 20s, had a well-paying job in construction, his father couldn't understand why he would ever leave that job to go back to school. And yet he did, and kept going back to school. And each of his degrees and jobs built off of the next one, but also changed in some way so that he could pull from different parts of the human experience. And then what about the circling around? Thinking about the last couple of years through the filter of the essay actually gives me great satisfaction in this area. Let me give you another example. I have felt, sometimes, that I'm always having to relearn the lesson of letting go of good things in favor of other good things. Maybe you guys have had to learn this lesson too. To let go of the good of home-cooked meals every night for the good of an extra hour preparing for class, and so on. And yet it's hard. I find myself frustrated when I still want to hold on to everything possible in my life, like a toddler clutching all of his toys to his chest, angry and upset when he can't possibly hold them all. Haven't I learned this lesson yet? But what if it's not that I need to keep facing the same lesson until I learn it, like a hurdle I just can't clear? What if instead it's a theme, as in literature? Can the lessons be richer if I let them be themes? Or, to use just one more example, I had an amazing experience with a life theme recently when a student I had prayed for many years ago stopped by my office and began to describe, without knowing it, all the ways those prayers had been answered, almost word for word. And in this understanding of theme, it's not only a great assurance of God's presence, but also a reminder that these things happen. and may even happen again as we circle around and retrace our steps. Please don't mishear what I'm saying, though. I think it would be possible to hear that all I've said so far and think, wow, what a flake. And maybe that'd be fair. I'm not suggesting that aimlessness is a goal. Just as essays get somewhere through occasional apparent aimlessness, so too our lives have direction, pointed toward God's glory and his kingdom. But sometimes the circuitous route is the one we need the most. And I'm also not suggesting that the capacity for change happen at the expense of commitment. It takes wisdom and discernment to know when to dig in and when to change course. And I pray that for you, and I pray that for myself. No, what I'm suggesting is that we consider the ways we're framing our experience. Is life a rising slope on the XY axis of time and improvement, of just better? Things are going to get better always. I think that's a default frame a lot of us actually have, we sort of measure our lives against. Is life a competition for scarce resources? Something you can win or lose? I've seen that one at work too. So let me just invite you to consider this other frame. I believe I am an essay, or that this is an essay. And when I find myself worked up, frustrated, anxious, maybe I can think of an essay and remember that twists and turns add up. That the girl in the wintry New York memory will see parts of the city she'd never see otherwise. That her patience will grow as it is being tested, and that she will, eventually, get to where she's going. Thank you. Have a good day.